Scary legends from around the world you probably haven't heard of. Some are well-worn warnings as familiar as the changing of seasons. Others are slow burns that end with a bang. Still others are just plain eerie. Stories of spiritual entities, paranormal activity, and creepy cryptids are passed through generations the world over, becoming local legends that only sometimes reach across borders and cultures. If the tales you grew up with no longer make you shiver, it's time to reanimate your roster with global tales of ghosts, hauntings, and petrifying processions. Halloween and the season in many parts of the world, people gravitate toward fear even in a complex and sometimes scary world. Here are some favorites: lore and fiction with maybe some truth sprinkled throughout. The Corpse Walkers. If you were out on the road in China in the old days, if you believe the stories that is, you might have encountered a strange procession. First, a man carrying a white paper lantern and scattering fake paper money ahead of them, chanting, "Yo ho, yo ho." Then, a towering hooded black figure wearing a ghastly mask and marching in an awkward wooden gait. Bringing up the rear, another man guiding the giant by touch, perhaps with a black cat. They were corpse walkers, and the giant was the corpse. Bad things happen when someone gets buried far from home. Without descendants to feed their spirit and keep their grave clean, they'll have a hard time settling in. They could even come back as a hungry ghost. So when a traveler died, the family would hire people who knew the strange art of walking a stiff body home. People kept their distance, but the corpse walkers were always welcome at inns because they paid 3 times the normal rate and were said to bring good luck. The Legend of Saint Denis. One of France's oldest spooky legends is also one of its most gruesome because it involves a walking, headless corpse. Said to have been Paris's first bishop, Denis, later Saint Denis, went on to lend his name to what is now the northern Paris suburb of Saint Denis, famous for its magnificent basilica, its soccer stadium, and the Olympic village that housed athletes during the Paris Games. The 3rd century Roman rulers of what was then Gaul were apparently less than thrilled that Denis and companions were making converts. Even after tossing them in prison, Denis continued to celebrate Mass. In some accounts, Denis suffered all manner of unspeakable tortures to make him renounce his faith. Eventually, he was sentenced to death and beheaded. Legend has it that Denis' corpse, lifted by 2 angels, picked up his severed head and walked from the Mount of Martyrs, the supposed execution site now called Montmartre, for about 6 kilometers, nearly 4 miles, before collapsing in the village of Cattenom, now the town of Saint Denis. In Montmartre today, Suzanne Buisson Square has a statue of Saint Denis holding his head, which he is said to have washed in the waters of a fountain there before staggering away with it. The Death Worm. Slithering beneath the vast dunes of the Gobi Desert, legend has it, is the monstrous Mongolian death worm. It kills prey by squirting lethal venom and can even electrocute from a distance. So goes the folklore that has since inspired depictions of giant deadly worms in movies and fiction. In Mongolia, the creature is known as Olgoi Korkai, which roughly translates as intestine worm. The critter became known abroad after American paleontologist and explorer Roy Chapman Andrews wrote about it in his 1926 book, On the Trail of Ancient Men, a narrative of the fieldwork of the Central Asiatic expeditions. During a meeting with the Mongolian premier, Andrews was asked to capture a specimen of the giant worm. None of those present ever had seen the creature, but they all firmly believed in its existence and described it minutely, he wrote. It is shaped like a sausage about 2 feet long, has no head or legs, and is poisonous that merely to touch it means instant death. Some believe the tale began with a more common animal, a snake, called the Tartar sand boa. Others, unconvinced, believe the giant worm exists. Follow-up expeditions have yet to yield any proof. Madame Koi Koi. In Nigeria, the Madame Koi Koi ghost story was a nightmare for students in boarding secondary schools. The madam in question often walked around hotels with her red heels, especially at night, the sound of koi, koi trailing behind her. You dare not come out if anyone raised an alarm that they heard the sound. Sometimes horrified students ran out and hotels were shut until morning or even for days. The backstory? No one knows for sure. But one popular theory was that she was fired as a teacher and died days later, vengeful, jobless, and angry. The Talbot Hotel. A sobbing woman, ghostly, dressed in white or sometimes black, and a storied oak staircase with royal connections. The spooky stories revolve around a staircase that still stands at the Talbot Hotel in Oundle, a United Kingdom market town about 85 miles north of London that's been around since the 1500s. Mary, Queen of Scots, rival to England's Queen Elizabeth I, is said to have descended the very same flight of steps on the way to her execution in 1587. But at the time, the multi-level structure was part of nearby Fotheringhay Castle, the site of Mary's beheading. Nearly 4 decades later, the Talbot was rebuilt using stones and other materials salvaged from the abandoned Fotheringhay, including the castle's staircase. Guests and staff have reported seeing a ghostly woman on the stairs, and some have said they heard sobbing in the wee hours, all thought to be the doomed queen. The Associated Press has visited several times and can confirm quality coffee and cakes, but not the presence of ghosts.